always under the threat of tyranny. And I ask, who are the leaders today who are going to stand up? There are threats against our very freedom as we speak, from inside and out. But it's going to take leaders to stand up for freedom. But not only that, but one of the reasons the Berlin Wall was able to be broken down was because the people of Berlin and Germany stood up. They stood up and tore it down themselves. It's going to take leaders like John Paul II, like Ronald Reagan, and Margaret Thatcher, who I'm going to talk about in the next segment. But it's also going to take the people, us, we the people, to stand up against any threat of tyranny, any threat of attack, any threat of oppression. Normal people can be a lot more powerful than they get credit for. So I ask you, are we going to be a generation that stood up for freedom like our ancestors and our ancestors before them? Those are the greatest generation. Those after it who fought against communism, and now we have to fight against oppression like terrorism. Are we going to be like that, or are we going to fold? Are we going to give up? I think we're going to fight against it because that's who we are. We are Americans. We proved it on September 11th by storming the cockpit of Flight 93, by storming into the buildings of the Twin Towers, helping one another, by giving blood in numerous amounts after September 11th and giving millions of dollars to the families. We are still those people. But it's nice on an anniversary of a great moment in freedom of the collapse of the Berlin Wall. It's great on an anniversary of something like that to remind us how precious our freedom has, to remind us how blessed we truly are. Well, when I get back, I'm going to actually play another speech that in Berlin as well. That, I don't know, it's just, well, you just have to wait and find out. You are listening to the Michael Yaffee program on WNSC.UCF.edu online radio. You're listening to the Michael Yaffee program, WNSC.UCF.edu online radio. Remember, if you want to instant message me during the show, you can at radio, WNSC. You can also email me at michael.yaffee@knights.ucf.edu. And I do record every show and post it on YouTube and Facebook, so you can look them up, so there's no excuse if you want to listen. I have another speech here for you, and I'm just going to go ahead and play it. That has to do, I'm just highlighting the anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall because it's important. It's important to remember how special freedom is. Here you go.
I want to say, on behalf of my countrymen who live many miles away on the other side of the Atlantic, who are far distant from you, that they take the greatest pride, that they have been able to share with you, even from a distance, the story of the last 18 years. I know of no town, no city that has been besieged for 18 years that still lives with the vitality and the force and the hope and the determination of the city of West Berlin. While the wall is the most obvious and vivid demonstration of the failures of the communist system, for all the world to see, we take no satisfaction in it, for it is, as your mayor has said, an offense not only against history, but an offense against humanity, separating families, dividing husbands and wives and brothers and sisters, and dividing a people who wish to be joined together. What is true of this city is true of Germany. Real lasting peace in Europe can never be assured as long as one German out of 4 is denied the elementary right of free men, and that is to make a free choice. In 18 years of peace and good faith, this generation of Germans has earned the right to be free, including the right to unite their families and their nation in lasting peace with goodwill to all people. Freedom is indivisible, and when one man is enslaved, all are not free. When all are free, then we can look forward to that day when this city will be joined as one, and this country and this great continent of Europe in a peaceful and hopeful globe. When that day finally comes, as it will, the people of West Berlin can take sober satisfaction in the fact that they were in the front lines for almost 2 decades. All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
Now that was JFK, John F. Kennedy, who also was a leader who went over there and he stood up for freedom, and he said the Berlin Wall is an obvious sign of the failures of the communist system. The fact is, though, there are still some in our own country and across the world who believe communism is still the way to go, who believe that people do not deserve freedom, but that a social elite should be in control. But freedom is the victor, and freedom will be the victor, as Ronald Reagan said. So I just got a text from my mom, and she said she was saying it was a good show, my faithful listener and my biggest fan. But she also said I need to connect it to Veterans Day, and I have not forgotten about Veterans Day. And my mom's a veteran. She was in the Navy, a nurse in the Navy during the Vietnam War. And the nurses have, they have one of the most important jobs in the military. Without them, who would take care of who would have taken care of the injured? See, we live in a country where we value life. We value the individual life most importantly. And that's why nurses are so important, because even our wounded soldiers, we don't leave them behind, but we make sure they are taken care of. We value life, we value those. And I just want to thank the veterans, because I have been talking about leaders who stood up against communism, who stood up against oppression in the world, but these leaders didn't have to stand up with arms. They stood up with ideas, they stood up with words. But they were allowed to do that. John F. Kennedy was allowed to go to West Berlin because of our veterans who fought in World War II to defeat Nazism. An even greater tyranny than that. Well, I don't even know if it's a greater tyranny, but some would say is a greater tyranny than that of the Soviet Union, even though the Soviet Union was responsible for millions of deaths as well. Our veterans went over there and they fought the worst kind of war in World War II so that West Berlin was able to thrive. And that's why the speeches of Reagan and John F. Kennedy were so important, because they wanted the memory of those who fought to free Germany to be, how do I want to put it? They didn't want their memories to be in vain for half of the German people. But they fought so all of Germany could be free. They fought for the idea of freedom. So this Veterans Day, I often, on my Facebook, I have thanks a veteran. I have been putting quotes, military quotes. And yes, I'm not in the military, but I believe those who are in the military, most of them, are better men than I, because they are willing to give the ultimate sacrifice so that I can sit in front of this microphone and speak freely.